11th Hour on Radio Sri Lanka, the program that illustrates the rediscovery of the glitz and the glam of the nation's most prominent entertainers and eminent personalities from the corporate sector. Join us
on every Mondays
at 11 a.m. exclusively on Radio Sri Lanka, 97.4 and 97.6 FM island-wide. A very good morning to all our dear listeners tuned to Radio Sri Lanka, yet another 11th hour program. The film industry can certainly be considered as one of the core industries which has a great positive externalities in creating a creative economy. The movie box office revenue is an important indicator to measure the realization of the market value of movie consumption, and this could be considered as the basic guarantee for the sustainable development of the movie industry. Phases of cinema will be discussed in detail with our special guest today on 11th hour. A very good morning to Angela Seneviratne.
Good morning, and good morning, Sri Lanka. It's a pleasure to be back in the beautiful studios of Radio Sri Lanka. I used to sit here many years ago.
It's actually very, very welcoming to have you back.
Thank you. I can almost hear the chairs saying, "Oh, it's you again."
With that note, let's kick off with the very first question. What's your perspectives in setting up possibilities toward a commercial success, which is certainly achievable in the cinema industry?
First of all, you're very optimistic. The simple truth of it, and this might not go down very well with people who think the world of the cinema that was. I'm going to be very careful with my grammar because it's more a case of was than is in this present context. To cut a long story to a little headline, the present tense is there is hardly any cinema in Sri Lanka. To go back to the question, we can talk of the very colorful history. And the possibilities of the future is with a lot of changes, many, many, many changes. And how fast that these changes will come about is questionable right now because we don't have movies being made in the same strength and volume that was in the, let me go back to the times when it was feasible. The 70s was the time when movies were really, really, really made. But there's a sidetrack story to that as well. So the perspective of the future of cinema is very, very dependent on change. And the change has to be made now for it to come to play in at least in about 3 years, because we are about 40 years behind in technology. We have the dreams, the younger generation are more into modern cinema, into the trending things of the Western and the Eastern world. We look at Korea and China also as it happens, and of course India is way ahead of us. So therefore, right now, at the moment, as we speak, it is at there's a very, very, very loud lull.
Right. Moving on to my second question. The global film industry has witnessed significant transformations in the past few years. How have these trends shaped our local cinema industry?
Not very much so far. As I said before in my answers, we are still behind in technology and all other aspects of production and filmmaking. I think, to the best of my knowledge, there are only about 29 to 30 filmmakers in this little island of ours, and most of them are not even working these days. So where are the movies? Secondly, the most important component of filmmaking is the money bags. Who has the money right now? Because if you have the money, you're questioned as to how you have that money, right? So a lot of prospective producers who will finance the movie industry are holding back right now at the moment. But then we go back a little bit in history, and there was a severe decline in cinema from the 70s, from 79 onwards. It was a downward fall. And I think it'll be it's a very deep canyon that we have fallen into. Mm-hmm. And it's a long way up this steep hill. But I don't know whether you're ever going to touch on this, but digital cinema is the answer. I'd like to talk about it later.
Yes, that's exactly what would be my third question.
Oh my goodness.
How do you see the box office forecast in a digital era?
Box office. What does box office mean? It means the money that you'll earn from your results of audio, what audiences play. That's what a box office means, really. Mm-hmm. You can't have a box office with people not going into the cinema.
Certainly.
Occupying the seats, buying the tickets. Right now, I think, as far as I remember, I may be wrong, I think we have about 120 or 125 cinemas in the whole of the island. Why? Because they have closed down for various reasons, for bankruptcy, for being unable to attract audiences, and also the lack of films to show. So I question this very much when there's publicity that a film has run for 100 days. My question is, to whom do these films run for 100 days? You don't get packed houses. Mm-hmm. In our era, we had packed houses in the 70s, in the 80s, and even in the 90s. We had packed houses. You don't find audiences lining up streets clamoring to get into a cinema anymore. And these are the hard facts. Why is that? A, it's too expensive. B, the cinemas, the kind of movies they run, might not attract the kind of audiences who want to see that kind of movie. I also want to drift a little bit from local cinema to international cinema. Mm-hmm. You see the box office, the films that really hit the number one slots. They were fantasy films. Mm-hmm. They were unimaginable, not realistic, not human, not nowadays ordinary lives. Those haven't hit the box office charts of the number ones. Steven Spielberg is not such a person. He makes films that are unimaginable. Mm-hmm. Why? Because people like to see that. The people like to see space movies and those kind of content. But where do you get a love story that has an ordinary love story of two people, or a family story hitting the box office? You don't get that anymore. Now you get a story, for instance, like Gone with the Wind, which I saw in the 1970s. That was a box office. It wasn't fantasy, but that was a box office. Now, reverting back to Sri Lankan box office hits in the 70s, we had the formula films, which are the change over from the very beginning of Sri Lankan cinema, where they copied South Indian movies, and it had the five formula. But that is my term. People will shout at me for that as well. the one funeral, one wedding, one party, two fights, one death, one birth. Those are the 5 formulas of a successful film, and compulsorily 5 songs. So it is funny, I know, I want to laugh. But those were the box office hits. People still talk about, oh, this star and another star. The way she danced and the way he was so muscular, and he was the hero, and that one was not the hero. This one was the comedian. Oh, he was wonderful.
Genuine reviews.
Absolutely. So that was our box office. Then you get the artistic, serious kind of people. I think it was, I can mention this name because we're very proud of him, Prasanna, with Anage, with Jai Sundra, all these directors who made films out of the box. I must speak with great respect and reverence of the late Dr. Lester James Pearis, who got out of that commercial film, commercial box office kind of recipe, and had family stories. He had Rekava, which was also shot for the first time outside of a studio. Otherwise, all the films at the very beginning were shot in built studios, just like in India, because they did the shooting in India in built-up studios. They brought the same concept here at the very beginning, and Dr. Lester, who you worked for, I think, if I remember right, the government film unit, broke away with William Blake and one other person to make films, real films with the big cameras and out of the studio in normal locations. So those serious films, and then it was Nidhaniya, which it starred the late Dr. Gamni Fonseca. Parasatumal, all these films were out of the box, didn't have the formulas, but they were box office hits. So what the audiences in Sri Lanka like and want to line up outside the theaters would be these fun element movies. Not that the stories are not taken, but you won't get much of a large audience. That's what has shown up so far. Mm-hmm. It might have changed now with the young generation having access to international cinema and seeing what it is outside. They're all watching the new releases on their phones. They've got Netflix, so they are. So therefore, it has to be a really die-hard Sinhala cinema fan who would want to go in for nostalgic reasons and sit in a theater and feel the real thing. That is the future of box office.
It was a beautiful illustration. True.
Thank you.
Agree fully. And sad though, but I have to conclude this with my very final question. The film industry fully embodies the integration of humanities along with art and technology. How do you see this transformation?
That's an international cinema. So, international cinema uses all these elements to make very, very different genres of films. We, as a very confined nation, very confined in everything, in education, in our freedom to do things with the media, we have to work within just borderlines of a lot of chosen topics. That's it. We have to choose it. So as I mentioned before, we have the box office elements that the audience would like to have. We would like box office elements are still, unfortunately for us, another reason why we lose our identity is that we think Indian cinema is something more watchable, if that's a word, if I can coin a word of my own, watchable, than a Sri Lankan production of the same ingredients. They would rather watch Shah Rukh Khan than any one of our topmost actors. Why is that? Because there's so much of color and life and technology in an Indian production. So the way forward is putting all these reasons why our downfall is still static and down, really down, is that we have to move ahead. We want to move forward. The young people are our hope, and I firmly believe, I'm stressing on the word I, because a lot of my contemporaries and colleagues do not think so. The way forward is with digital cinema, where access to movies is easy. Making digital movies is the way forward, very feasible. It's less expenses on a larger round of things. And most of all, the cinema industry cannot survive without our audiences, our fans.
True.
Yes. So in whatever way, I directly speak to the ones in authority at the moment, be it the government, be it the corporation, be it anyone in authority. Please think of all the people who have served the industry right now. They are talented. The young ones need training. We in our era did not have the training. Nowadays, education should incorporate training in whatever field they would want to serve in cinema. The cameraman, the technicians, the sound, everybody should be trained. Even the actors and actresses. Not everyone has the talent to perform without training. So modernization is the key. Using the young people is the key. Looking after the ones who serve the industry is a key. On that note, those are my answers.
Nostalgic memories of the film industry was summed up beautifully, Angela.
Thank you very much.
Hope more unimaginable movies would be produced to be a success under the box office. Certainly a fantasy dream as of now, but let's be positive.
Yes, we shall be. We shall be. Thank you, Sri Lanka.
Very much.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Angela Seneviratne, for connecting with 11th Hour today.